Talk Show. Recorded live.
Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we continue our Asian horror retrospective with the 1985 film Mr. Vampire. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, creator of the Alex Van Helsing novels. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, lead singer of the band Deserts of Mars and co-creator of the comic Psychon from Tokyopop and Clockworks from Humanoids. And tomorrow is his birthday. Say hello and happy birthday.
Howdy, thanks.
Of course. We're so proud to know you and so proud to have you on the night before your birthday. It is meaningful to us. Also in Austin is Drew Edwards, writer for Rockabilly Online and creator and writer of the long-running comic Halloween Man for Monsterverse Comics. Say hello, Drew.
Hello.
Hello. And finally, also joining us from Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Joya Guzman. Say hello.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Tony. Happy birthday to you.
I can't believe I let you sing full birthday song. But it was sweet.
And
okay.
also to my BFF Jennifer Hale, his birthday is today. I don't know if she listens to us,
awesome.
But shout out to her.
Rock on. Okay. Mr. Vampire, this is the movie. And the funny thing is, it's your birthday, and you have brought us today's film. You've actually brought us this entire retrospective. So you know, to the extent that we love this, we can thank you. And to the extent that we don't love this, if that should happen, we can bring those thoughts to you and see how they resonate. All right. Mr. Vampire is a 1985 Hong Kong comedy horror film directed by Ricky Lau in his directorial debut and also produced by Sammo Hung. The film's box office success led to the creation of a Mr. Vampire franchise with the release of 4 sequels directed by Ricky Lau from 86 to 92, and subsequently similarly themed films with different directors released all around this period, from the late 80s to the early 90s. The Vampire of the film is based on the Yangshi, the hopping corpses of Chinese folklore, whom we have seen in another movie on this show. The film was released under the Chinese title Hold Your Breath for a Moment, and the film was the breakthrough success of the Yangshi genre, a trend popular in Hong Kong during the 80s, established many of the genre's recognizable tropes. In other words, in theory, Tony, I hope that you will let us know if this is the case. If you want to be introduced to this crazy hoppin' demon genre, this is the movie to start with because it sets up a lot of those thoughts. So with that in mind, tell us, Tony, is that the case, and what are your opening thoughts, and why have you brought us here?
I love this movie a lot. I can't remember which friend first got me into this, into knowing about Chinese vampires and stuff like that, but it is awesome. I love the slapstick comedy. It's totally different. Like, rigor mortis is like the serious, dark cousin of this movie, and I like what this movie does. I like this supernatural thing. I was actually first exposed to these vampires through a Nintendo game, 8-bit Nintendo game called Phantom Fighter. And years later, I saw this movie and was like, oh yeah, hopping vampires. That's why they made that game with the hopping vampires. Like, this is the thing. And, yeah, I love it. Again, it goes back to what I was talking about last time, where the vampires, the legend comes from the people transporting the corpses to their villages, and they looked like they were hopping as they were transported, carried by, on poles. And in here, we actually have a guy who's leading vampires to their respective families, which is awesome too.
Yeah,
but that's just, I don't know. I really, really enjoy these movies. They get a little cheesy. They kind of turn like the way Godzilla movies do and Gamera movies. They kind of get homogenized, and eventually there's one with a little kid vampire that the fellow kids befriend and take him on to a theme park and have him ride a roller coaster and like stuff like that. But yeah, this one especially, I really, really enjoy it.
That's wonderful. And when we come back in a second, I'm going to ask more about the hopping vampires to explain that again. Because yes, all the vampires in this movie, are as they move around,
bouncy, full of fun.
They hop. They literally hop. And
which, by the way, is why rigor mortis is kind of called, like, part of it's just the supernatural part. The other part is they have rigor mortis, so they don't move that well. So that's when their hands are out and they hop because they can't really walk. And so that's why rigor mortis, the title ties back into that.
But I thought that the idea was that it was like this, that these spirit demons were meant to fly. But on stage in old operas, the actors would suggest flight by hopping, and so then when it got translated to movies, they just kept the conceit of hopping, even though it was no longer needed. Because
they certainly seem to move pretty well when they're fighting and everything.
But is what I just said completely wrong, Tony? Is that just not the case?
No, I mean there's a lot of different stories that tie into that. I mean it was kind of meant to show flying, but part of it, again, I mean, it all really kind of goes back to, like I said, when they were transporting them and they would bounce as the people were carrying them, from place to place, and they looked like they were hopping. But there's a certain amount of they're supposed to be flying, but the hopping kind of, because sometimes they're on wires and they hop really far,
Yes. Right.
Well, it kind of reminds me of Superman and, like, the comics from, like, the early 30s before he could fly, and he just would jump really far. Like, that's what it made me think of.
Yeah.
So, all right. In fact, before we go deeper into it, Drew, what are your opening thoughts of Mr. Vampire?
I liked this movie considerably better than Rigor Mortis. I was very taken with it for the most part. It reminded me a lot of, like, the first time I saw any of the Hammer movies, because it was just sort of like opening up a whole new horror world. And I liked all the folklore in it. And, even though some of the, like, at times the production values are really great, and then there are some times where, the production values are kind of shoddy, but even that is, like, kind of endearing and fun. And I don't know, I thought it was a really entertaining flick, and like I said, I very much opened me up to this idea of Chinese vampires, and I would, if they aren't too hard to track down, I would very much like to see some of the sequels.
Oh, absolutely.
I think Vulcan has most of them. I have a couple of them as well.
Nice.
When we, quick question, Tony, when we did the Dracula Festival at the Alamo Drafthouse, didn't we show 2 Mr. Vampire movies, like, back to back? I mean, I could have sworn that we had both.
Possibly. There might, we might have shown New Mr. Vampire, which was a whole kind of reboot, restart kind of thing called New Mr. Vampire. Maybe we should Mr. Vampire and New Mr. Vampire. I'm not positive though.
Yeah, I just remember that the vampires were, like, running around inside of a very modern sort of condominium, and there was, the family had, like, a backyard. It was very 80s,
Oh, there's definitely, there's a lot of contemporary ones. In fact, I mean, that's why they have eventually the one with the kid who has, where they take him around and go to the latest theme park and stuff like that.
That's real familiar, yeah. Okay, Julia, lay it on us. What did you think about this movie?
I think this is going to be one of those episodes where everybody's in agreement that it's a great movie. I really, 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 really enjoyed it. I thought it was so much fun. I was so excited to be, just like what Drew was saying, I was so excited to be introduced to this. And I know we've had a little bit of the Chinese vampires, but just to kind of, jump into it a little bit more, into the whole culture and all the crazy stuff. But it's hilarious. It is such a funny movie, and it's interesting, and I liked it a lot. I was so happy that I kept saying, I'm so glad that Tony brought this movie to us.
We were laughing so much, because we watched it. We watched this, on a computer. So we're sitting there on the couch, and our 13-year-old was, like, complaining to us the next day. She was like, "You guys were laughing so much." And
well, I think the part she complained about was when I was shrieking because the vampire guy was like being covered in rats, and I was like, oh my god. Oh, that's the other thing is that that is so interesting about all these movies is that they do their own stunts. So it's like the actual guy is just lying there being like these rats are crawling all over him. I'm just freaking out.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't believe it. But yeah, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, there's
I really enjoyed the final vampire makeup that we got, where he kind of just looks like a mummified version of Dr. Fu Manchu. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, what I thought was funny. Okay, we've seen one other Chinese vampire thing because we saw Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires, which comes from like 10 years before this movie, and it had all the zombies did a sort of a kind of a pony trot, as they moved around. So it was a similar thing where they had this awkward sort of affected manner of moving, but the vampires were special vampires. There were 7 golden vampires, and they all moved like they were all expert swordsmen in that movie. They didn't have these guys. But the here, what I'm curious about, this movie's so zany and so like, and by that I mean, basically the just to get into the plot a little bit, you've got essentially what it's about is you have this one Taoist priest who is stoic and clever and smart and patient, endlessly patient, because he has 2 apprentices who are completely for shit. And
they're idiots. One guy tries really hard and he's good at martial arts. The other guy's just a total mess up. Like, he's a total screw up.
No, one is Gilligan. I mean, one of
yes, exactly.
Man Choi is literally Gilligan. He, you want him to have the sailor hat on. He stumbles around. He's constantly knocking things over. If somebody, if something's like, if you need to leave a candle on or a demon's going to come back to life, for sure he is going to knock the candle over. He is, and he has all the best comedy bits. And then there's the handsome apprentice who is basically just sort of a layabout. He's an expert kung fu guy, but he can't be trusted because he's too sensual. And these 2 apprentices sort of, they're the worst of humanity, but they are loyal in the end to this wonderful Taoist monk who is supposed to be older, and even though he's played by a wonderful actor who's only about 33 years old. So basically, the plot of it, they have to deal with a lot of shenanigans involving, basically they take care of demons and corpses, and the plot sort of follows one that causes them extra trouble. But I have a question. This movie is so zany and funny and scary and all of those things. Is that a thing in China, or was this, or if this kicked off a new genre, did that mean that if I were a moviegoer in China, I'd be like, wow, this movie is so different? I mean, is it as different to the Chinese as it is to us?
I think there was, I have to look it up. I think it probably did start. I think there was a history of that kind of like, horror comedy kind of pairing, or at least, comedic stuff. But I think that, it did. There were a bunch of movies. There was Encounters of the Spooky Kind and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That were, but I think, the popularity showed that this is a thing. I mean, again, by the way, Max was pointing out that in mainland China, you can't show the supernatural like this. Like, this is a Hong Kong movie. Like, there are censors, and that's a big no-no to
really?
have this kind of stuff. So, yeah, this is definitely Hong Kong.
So the communists were against showing supernatural stuff. That's interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, getting stuff to actually show in China, like getting through the censors, it's something else. I mean, it is. It's not easy. And I know because he was trying to get a movie through that system, actually, like a screenplay. So that's kind of cool.
Wow, I mean,
more than kind of cool. Like, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. You mentioned, I think you mentioned Adventures of the Spooky Kind, Chinese Ghost Story. That one came out. Although that's 87, so that would have come 2 years after this. So, maybe it's a case where just like there were spy movies before James Bond, but somehow James Bond just sort of crystallizes everything. You know, you start to like see everything really come together.
Right.
I'm fascinated by the fact that we watched Rigor Mortis last week, and it shared some of the same cast as this movie, but that one doesn't have the zaniness of this one. You know,
right. And that was kind of what was weird when I saw Rigor Mortis. It was really awesome seeing the members who are still alive to come back and kind of sort of reprise their roles. Of course, I missed, you know, the actors that are no longer with us that I was familiar with, but you know, it was strange seeing such a serious take. I wasn't expecting that when I saw it in Fantastic Fest. I mean, it's cool because it's that. It's definitely a darker, I would say, like I said last time, more deliberate movie. In its pacing and its kind of relentless dread in a lot of ways. Whereas this, you know, the horror happens and then you've got a bit and then there's a horror and there's more of a bit. There's even the crazy subplot with the ghost woman.
I love the ghost woman. I love that she is the ghost.
Explain it from the top, Joanne.
Well, the concept of the ghost in this movie is so different from the concept of ghosts that we have in other movies. For example, she appears. She's brought in by these guys carrying her in a what do you call the what do you call it? Huh?
Like a litter or what's the other word for it?
Well, it's a gondola. It's a kind of anyway, it's a carriage.
Yeah, but it's the thing that the guys carry. Like they all have them on the shoulder. Anyway, so she's got these ghost carriers that are carrying her in, and then she manages to get onto the back of one of the apprentice guy's bikes, and he doesn't notice because I guess she can make herself visible or invisible, and so she's not visible to him, but yet she is a physical form because when he rides under a low-hanging tree branch, she just gets whacked in the head and falls off, and then she's like grabbing her head like, ouch, that hurt. That was just so funny because it's like she can appear or disappear. She doesn't have a physical form, but when she does have a physical form, then she actually can be injured. I don't know. That was really funny. So, but she kind of makes it her point that she's going to seduce him, and for whatever nefarious purposes she has.
No, she's looking for love. I mean,
really?
Chinese
ghosts.
Well, yeah, kind of, but then, I mean, it's also, like, going to drain his soul, or drain his,
life
at least,
force.
This was about the only part of this movie that I was simultaneously interested by it, but I have to admit it was the only part that, like, my sort of 21st century liberal mindset made me a little troubled, and that it does kind of play into, like, a lot of things that we see in popular culture that demonize women who enjoy sex are, in this case, literally demonized. But
I mean, but it's a fairly common. I mean, I know where you're coming from.
It comes from folklore, but that's sort of almost.
But true,
crystallizes
vampires are. Vampires are just demonized versions of men who enjoy seducing women.
But like, and even that. I mean, you know, like in Western culture,
you're right.
If you are shown to enjoy sex, there's something wrong with you. Like, I couldn't quite figure out why, you know, the monk was so adamant that she had to be destroyed through most of the movie.
Well, she's going to kill his. I mean, she's going to kill him. Like, that's part of it.
They never really. I mean,
no, he gets tired.
They dance around that issue. Like, it's not really talked about that much.
It's pretty obvious. He's in poor health. Like, she's the ghost version of a vampire, pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, and it is folklore, and it, you know, there's many tales of it, but it's basically like the ghost will. I don't know if I forgot the folklore. I'm not positive that he becomes like a ghost and joins her, or if she just goes from man to man.
She says she loves him and she saves him at one point. So
right.
I mean, obviously there's this, but again, like I am interested in the folkloric aspect of it, but like I said, like the fact that again we're presented with this sort of predatory.
Yes.
You know,
She's
that's the thing.
also an
That's the thing that I have. That's the thing that I have a very as a pop cultural construct that I have a very love-hate relationship with, I guess.
Well, I have always enjoyed that. Yeah, she's a succubus. She is there to drain his valuable life source, and you know, tire him out.
Yeah, and she's an imposter. I mean, she's actually quite deteriorated and hideous.
I think that's a symbolism. She's a ghost. I mean, so that's the way she appears to the Taoist monk when he reveals her true form, which is that she's a demon. But the fact is, you know, Drew's right, and yet I find that I'm much more interested in vampire movies and ghost movies where the treatment of sexuality is a complicated one, where we fear it, and the you know the
But it is to
sexuality
be.
is
The
scary.
fact is that what we're fearing in these movies, and I think in real life too, is the control that this sexual power has over us. So, I mean, I think that's what it is, and I think that's
that's why I think women characters, female characters of the sort, tend to get it worse than
I don't agree. I think the vampire. I think Dracula is just as bad, if not worse.
But Dracula's a king of his kind. Like usually you don't. I mean, the only real in-depth exploration of a character like this in Western culture that I can think of offhand is Carmilla, and you know she's not really treated the same way as Dracula, and I enjoy that. I enjoy that book. Like I said, this is kind of a love-hate thing.
I think this is a wonderful topic. No, you're totally right. There's deep literature on this. I mean, first of all, the Chinese and Japanese female ghosts are fascinating. I mean, all kinds of things happen in these stories. You know, like you'll have ones where this ghost, like this is the simple one because it's a subplot in this movie. So in this case, it's I'm going to get this beautiful student boy to sleep with me, the ghost, until he's dead, and that. But in other ones, she's in love with him, and she'll like move in with him, and like they'll have children, but she'll have to hide that she's a ghost, and usually there's a folkloric thing where she's like, as long as you never like open up this particular purse of mine, you know, we'll be able to live happily ever after.
I have to ask, not related to any of the sexual politics that we're discussing, but one of the strongest visuals in this movie is her severed head, like floating around and trying to attack the lead. Is that where Hellboy crib that from?
Well,
this?
Probably. I mean,
flying heads are. Yeah.
Yeah, that happens in other Chinese ghost movies as well.
Because that was awesome. I love that.
Encounters of Spooky Kind doesn't have that one too, or is that another one? I need to watch that one again. Actually,
I mean, the Malaysians have one called a Penanggalang that does this, and it's shown up in movies. I mean,
that one has that one? I'm pretty sure it has entrails as well.
Yeah, that's right. It it kind of unscrews itself and carries its entrails around.
Oh, that's groovy.
People. I know, it's groovy.
This is a much more palatable version of that.
And the Vikings, for what it's worth, the Vikings also had a tree of heads in Uppsala, Sweden. Basically, they would hang up the heads of those that they had vanquished, and I don't remember if there's ever actually been. I have written stories where those heads like come back and attack people, but I don't. But I stole it from the Chinese stuff. I have no idea if there's ever been any Viking idea of heads going nuts. But
heads gone wild.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it. Yes.
She was just trying to get ahead in the world.
Jesus.
Ouch.
Jesus God. But both of those wonderful. I don't know. You know what strikes me about this though? Check this out. This is 1985, right? Okay, 1987 over here in the United States, Lost Boys comes out, and I remember. Like all the legitimate critical, organs, and Siskel and Ebert, the New York Times, all those guys just hated Lost Boys. And one of their big complaints about it was, look how crazy this is with the vampires jumping around and flying and all this. And it just, everybody approached it as though it was just terribly beneath them, like it was somehow beneath Hollywood to show such such ridiculous stuff. Whereas in this movie, way over in Hong Kong, they're like, we got heads flying around, we got hopping vampires, we got kung fu. There's just this sort of gleeful, glorious feeling of what the hell else can we throw into this?
By the way, just to set the record straight, Encounters of the Spooky Kind did come out first. So it was actually, the progenitor of where we're going with this. Like, it sets the tone for us having a Mr. Vampire later on.
I can't remember. I mean, we may well have watched it. I don't remember if I've seen Encounters of the Spooky Kind, but it had. And it's got the priest from Lam Ching Ying is the priest. He's in Encounters of the Spooky Kind too, as well. So you mean the same Taoist priest in this one?
Yeah. Oh, and he's an inspector in Encounters of the Spooky Kind. That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah. So he was in first of those two. So he's kind of continuing. He's like the horror comedy guy when you want a horror comedy guy to.
So you would
I guess
he's
play
the
the straight
Chinese
man
Bruce
more or
Campbell.
less. Yeah. Except he plays the straight man, which I guess Bruce Campbell sort of kind of does. Yeah.
What's wild?
This does have, now that I mention it, this does, even though it's not as bombastically violent as the Evil Dead movies, it does seem to have a kinship. I mean, they're contemporary, so obviously that one was not influencing the other, but the combination of slapstick and horror seems to, they would certainly, like, you could do a double feature with this and Evil Dead 2, and I think it would play well together.
I agree.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. I mean, I want to point out, by the way, that this Taoist priest, who everybody looks at, and he's such a wonderful character, fantastic. So if this is the guy, if it's Lam Ching Ying, and they've given him this unibrow, which apparently has cultural meaning here, it means he's pure, but he's actually he's born in 52, so that makes him really actually only 33 years old in this movie. And what's tragic is that he actually died in 1997, 44, liver cancer. So he never even. This guy could have had such a wonderful long career. He's very funny. He can do so much with just his face and showing his constant, his constant impatience with his idiotic apprentices and his constant. I love how ready he is for any nutso thing that's going to happen with these corpses that he's dealing with, because he's got a big workshop full of.
Oh, I just love and I love the vampires that they keep as like their little army of vampires, and so you can control them by putting those. What do you call those papers, Tony, that they put on their foreheads?
It's just like it's basically just a spell that they put on, but not only that, but he controls them with the bell. I mean, because he's
but what do you call
the guy who's.
What did Sophia say they were called?
They called them sutras because in
Inuyasha, so they called sutras. But anyway, there's these spells that you stick on the vampires, and it keeps them under your control, and so they keep them still or whatever, and then you ring the bell and they can do things. But what's so funny is that they would put these spells on the paper, and then if they would come off, suddenly the vampires would be trying to kill you. And so, of course, like you said, the slapstick part of it is that the idiotic apprentices are constantly accidentally pulling the papers off or whatever. But at one point, you've got the master, I guess. He's fighting a vampire, and he sticks the paper on him right as he's choking him to death. But he realizes he can't. The vampire's so strong that now that he's paralyzed him with the paper, he can't get free from his grip. So he has to pull the paper back off so that he can adjust the vampire and then put it back on him again. It was just so fun. That stuff was hilarious to me, how the vampires fight and like how they're controlled with the bells and the papers, and the papers will come off very easily and at random points, and so then you've got
it's such a wonderful.
Very clever.
And I think that also was in. I can't remember if any of that stuff was in Chinese Ghost Story, but the Tony. Okay, explain something to me. Go back for a second to the hopping. You said something about leading the corpses back to a village. Why would you be doing that? I'm trying to understand.
It's rural, and so somebody dies, and you
die in the city. You're not out
or wherever, like out in the field or whatever. and you bring, or maybe they die in a rural place and they're bringing them to the city or wherever. Like, that's the kind of that's kind of where that comes from. So
you'd be, in other words, to transport corpses. We're saying that in medieval China, to transport corpses, you would carry them up and down. You'd carry them standing up, basically.
Yeah, that's what that's what I've read.
And so as you carry them, they bounce a little bit because you're probably on long poles that workers are holding the poles, so the corpses bounce as their heels hit the ground. And so in the popular imagination, when these corpses come back, they dance like that, which reminds the audience of who may have seen corpses being carried in such a way. I don't know if that's true, but that sounds great. I mean, that's as good an explanation as I've ever heard.
That's part of it. I mean, anytime that's one part of how it is. There's also, it's the same way that vampires.
Yeah.
There was a thing, and then there's vampire lore has increased and changed and morphed and
right.
Everything like that.
And you might have like 3 or 4 plausible explanations for why a story is the way it is.
Right. And they bring about it says, and Wikipedia has it too, in addition to stuff I've read, but relatives of a person who died far away from home couldn't afford vehicles to have the deceased person's body transported home, so they would hire a Taoist priest to reanimate the dead and teach them to hop their way home.
Oh my God, that's just brilliant. That's so amazing. And in fact, there's at the beginning and the end of this movie, which is so strange, it's almost like something out of Marvel Comics. You just have to just kind of assume that that these characters know one another and everything. This movie opens up with a character who is actually the priest or the demon fighter from Rigor Mortis, a character called Four Eyes, and he is another Taoist priest, and he's moving across the countryside with the vampires that are all in his care. And he's got them under control because they've all got the spells on their face. And that's the first time that we see them.
And to answer your question, Wikipedia also answers that, and it's kind of what I was getting at, but I forgot. So, like, you would go work somewhere, and maybe you passed away. Like, you wouldn't be able to, you go work somewhere far off, and then you'd have to get home to your hometown or whatever, and so these people would transport you back home, or hire you to transport you back.
And that's why the guy in the movie, the Four Eyes, is calling them his customers, right?
Yeah, his clients, yeah. Know what's funny? I forgot that we're going to get different things because I actually, when I realized somehow or another my beloved megastar out-of-print version of Mr. Vampire was missing, which I'm sure somebody didn't do it maliciously, but damn it, I wish I knew who had my copy.
Someone out there.
I ordered a new one, and it was a new remastered print with brand new subtitles. So I kind of missed the kind of weird, not always grammatically correct, not always great subtitles that were kind of burned into the other one. Now I have this really nice version with a little bit better subtitles. Although they do, since the girl had been away to Europe, they translate her as Tina in this newer subtitle, and they left her name, if I remember correctly, as Tintin in the older one I had.
Yeah, that's what she was in the one that I watched.
Yeah. TIN-TIN, right?
Yeah.
In the newer one, they translated Tina, which is kind of more like, she's supposed to, she has more European name.
Tina to the audience.
Well, she seems like a Tina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
like she's kind of a like what I would think a Tina would be like.
Yeah, her, so that's part of the slapstick. I love how she messes with them. So when our bumbling sidekicks and their master meet her, her father's a wealthy guy. She's been studying abroad. She's been studying makeup abroad. She's in very European clothes. She's, I'm better than this kind of village place that I'm in. And so they go to meet her. They go to meet her for
like a Mary Poppins dress.
Yeah, they go to meet her for high tea, and she messes with them by, drinking her coffee wrong. So they do that too. They drink the cream and they drink the coffee, and they don't know. They're like, well, I don't know what to do with this coffee thing. It's I don't know. All those gags are really cool, and of course,
well, she goes to the store and the guy confuses her for a hooker.
Yeah, prostitute local, because she knows how to do makeup and stuff. And there's a lot of. It just has so many good bits.
That whole
I
bit
really.
For some reason, he believes, because of some random thing his mom says that he misunderstands, the handsome apprentice also works in his mom's store, and he comes to think incorrectly that Ting Ting, who's walking across the street there, is a hooker. For some reason...
Well, his mom goes, be nice to her even if she's a whore.
Even if he takes that literally, thinks she's a prostitute. She comes in, they have a long conversation where he believes that she's talking about prostitution, and he's asking things like, well, you intend to keep doing this? And blah, blah, blah.
She's talking about makeup.
And it's Joyce DeWitt and John Ritter could have had this conversation.
Yeah.
And it's
right.
completely, it's wonderful, though. It's just in keeping with the fact that this movie is truly just a comedy with monsters in it, and way, way more... I don't know. It's way more.
Well, it gives you a lot of monster value, I have to say. Like the fact that there are so many vampires and a ghost, and even at one point a guy in a gorilla suit.
Yes.
Oh, that's so random too. Like that's
and rats. Don't forget rats.
Random.
Yes.
Well, the rats kind of make sense in that hole that he's in. But when they go searching for the vampire eventually, and they go into a cave, and then there's a gorilla that, I guess, are there apes? Are there just apes out and about in China? I don't know. Or is it just purely for comedic effect, like, and here's a guy in a gorilla suit.
Unlike all the other creatures in the movie, they don't really make an attempt to make a convincing gorilla. It's literally a guy in, like, a cheap gorilla suit. But I kind of love that.
No,
yeah.
That is crazy. It's really kitchen sink kind of comedy at
that
point.
It's got a very like Keystone Cops kind of feel to it.
Especially when they get into all the kung fu stuff, because whenever the vampires get free, and the main crux of the plot here is that they have to take care of a couple of corpses, and they keep getting free. And
well,
whenever
the setup is for the whole unleashing the vampires. Is they unleash the vampire because they dig up a corpse because the fortune teller has told them that they should dig up this corpse at a certain time and they would get good fortune. Well, also the thing they find out that the father, who is the vampire, angered the fortune teller, cheated him, and so a lot of the stuff that happened afterwards, the fortune teller really kind of screwed him over. So in telling him this, it's kind of this fortune teller's revenge on the family. So when they go to rebury him, they're like, well, if we rebury him the right way, you'll have better fortune. It's too late now, but at least things won't get worse. Except that they realize he was an angry guy, and that helped him become a vampire. And so
you've got the rich dad who hires the Taoist monk and his two apprentices, and he says, listen, good fortune, I want to dig up my dad, the old man, Ting Ting's grandfather, rebury him. But what ends up happening, of course, is that they end up setting off the fact that old corpse is going to become a vampire, and very quickly they wind up with another vampire.
I love that whole scene of the monk examining the gravesite and his reactions to everything. Like that was such a great.
Yeah.
What, Tony?
He's a mortician, or he works as a mortician, but that also puts him front and center to be a monk who takes care of supernatural entities. Like he's got a good excuse to, kind of be a vampire hunter or a demon hunter, because he's exposed to that. So when you need to take care of something like that, he's there on hand. And
that's
also
the logic of having
super cool.
The logic of having your local undertaker be the guy that also fights your undead, is
great.
Is perfect, and I'm
wonderful.
surprised it's not done in more things.
I mean, gosh, you could rip that off today.
Like Giles should have been an undertaker instead of the librarian.
Yeah,
no, the convenience of having Giles in a library, for the sake of being in a school, but
it would be tough to have Buffy wandering over and hanging out at a mortuary after school every day.
True.
Yeah.
But at least they should have had an ally that was the coroner or whatever.
Oh, for sure. No, it's comedy gold.
well, when they inevitably reboot it, I'm sure they'll keep that in mind.
Are you kidding me? One of us is going to steal that like tomorrow.
For Fire Shark.
Yes.
Right.
I do this whole thing just to fire off ideas, and be inspired. So yes. Let's see. We have, by the time we have and there's one more piece that we haven't really mentioned, which is
that he's turning into a vampire.
Well, there's the other bit of comedy. So that's fine. The other bit of comedy comes from they have the two apprentices have a cousin, I suppose. Oh no, it's the cousin of the girl that they love, and he represents the local government, and the local government is completely moronic. I mean, they are.
Well,
there's not a clever policeman in this entire movie.
They're like moronic yet jackbooted. That's like the worst combination.
Yes,
right.
That's right. That's right. They're gonna, they're going to arrest you and they're going to put you someplace not safe. They're not going to listen to reason, and and they're going to torture you. Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah, they're gonna brand you with hot pokers and. Well,
that was a psych out. There was actually a few psych outs like that, and that was at one point where he's gonna brand him and he brands him, but then it turns out it's just a piece of like leather that's over.
Well, that was the first time. He was going to eventually work up to actually branding him. He was trying to get him to talk. That was the way of wearing him down.
He gets branded himself eventually. But the best part, oh my gosh, I'm sure what we were about to talk about, Jason, is when they do the voodoo and so that one of the apprentice guys is controlling the bad guy cop or whatever, and he's making him kind of hit on this poor girl, and then he starts like taking off his clothes, and then he's like literally butt naked, and just like doing this crazy dance, and then he's humping the staircase banister. Oh my God, that was so funny. It was such a funny scene.
It is, and it's more. It's purely. This is an almost Hollywood bit of. It is Hollywood. Of totally. Like mirror comedy.
Yeah.
That we've seen before. It's a Donald O'Connor kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. That's what I was saying. It was like the Chinese.
Well, I mean, it reminded me of the old Harpo Marx bit. The often imitated, although a tad bit raunchier.
Yeah, but not by much. And that's so great. We should also hit upon. We find out how vampires become vampires in this movie because while the handsome apprentice is being haunted and they have to deal with that ghost, the Gilligan apprentice, named Man is bitten, I suppose, by the vampire. He's infected by the vampire, and so he's becoming a vampire. And so with him, the process of becoming a vampire takes several days, and you go through lots of stages. But because vampires are stiff, the Taoist monk says, you know what, you need to just keep moving while we figure out how to cure you. And so he has to basically hate.
Well, didn't he give him like I got the impression he gave him like some kind of antidote, but that he needed to keep moving.
It's rice soup.
Right.
What?
Well, glutinous rice is what takes him out.
The rice is what he has to walk on.
He does a poultice as well, which, by the way, PETA has nothing going on in China.
I know. I said the same thing, Tony. I was like, there is not going to be no animals were harmed during the making of this film.
No. There's none of that in Hong Kong. It's chickens getting their necks cut, and snakes. Getting, whether or not the snake was alive, I'm not sure. But snakes, getting their liver taken out or whatever, their gallbladder maybe. I forgot which.
Slaughter a snake.
Spleen.
Yeah, I forgot which one. What part is there, but he grinds it up. For the poultice for.
According to the captions, it was the spleen.
Yeah. Yeah. But all that happens, And he also goes, there's a comedy bit where, glutinous rice, they had it in rigor mortis, but, it ties back to the legend that, it's kind of will help take the vampire toxins out of you. So they want him to eat, but of course they go to a rice vendor who's unscrupulous, and so they don't get pure glutinous rice. So, Dan's slowly turning into a vampire. His fingernails are growing, and he's clipping them, and they're trying to file down his. I love when they're trying to file down his fangs.
Oh.
Like, if we just file these down, you'll have a little bit longer. But all of that stuff is in his, crazy dance when they make him dance
that
around.
Stuff it's later cribbed, like into other things, because there's a sequence like that in From Dusk Till Dawn where Tom Savini is trying to hide the fact that he's turning into a vampire.
Yeah, so he's he puts on rouge and starts doing this crazy dance.
Yeah.
So funny.
That guy's a great physical actor. He's really good.
Who was the guy who was turned into a vampire in From Dusk Till Dawn and is hiding his
It's Tom Savini as
yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, so Tom Savini, if I recall, he's hiding his hands because he suddenly got the long fingernails and doing stuff like that. Absolutely. Yeah, all of that's here. But you're right, because and there's some cultural stuff going on. Man, he puts on rouge, but now that he's got rouge, now he's going to do a whole sort of gay thing and start talking in a falsetto voice and doing his weird. There's just sort of it's constant. And it's so funny that I actually like this, because if you listen to our shows, I can't stand broad comedies. That's the thing that I usually wind up bitching about, is I felt like the humor was too broad. I just kind of felt like. But in this case, somehow there's such a crazy gleefulness to it, and the actors are giving themselves to it so much. I mean, they're leaping off balconies by themselves, and they're jumping through glass for me. I'm going along with all of this, and
I also love all of the cool, the whole Chinese supernatural, where they make the string with the blood, and that's a spell, and that hurts the vampires. And there's the glutinous rice thing. There's the paper that they put on the vampires. There's all these bits and all these hand gestures, and when they're fighting the ghost, he's got the coin sword that's also it's magic, and it can turn into a chain that can restrain the ghost. All this stuff, awesome.
It reminds me of Marvel
none of this
comics.
stuff happens. None of this stuff. We don't have this stuff in our European, or even and we don't even have the same kind of
crosses and garlic might seem equally strange to the people in China.
Of course.
Though. I mean, I've talked to people. Tony's exactly right, though. If you were to pitch some of this stuff, maybe not today, but if you were to go back 15 years ago, because I've talked to a lot of producers in time, and you go, hey, how about we do this thing where his sword turns into a chain, and they're always like, you need really only one of these per movie, because audiences aren't ready for more than one weird thing per movie.
Screw that, man. That's what they obviously. Now that we have these movies that have come over here, but I always was just angry at that response when I'm watching these movies. These kind of innovative, crazy things going on. There's, the Shaw Brothers had the flying guillotine. There's House of Traps. There's all this stuff, and you talk to a producer in Hollywood, and up until recently, they're like, oh, I don't know about that. I don't know if people are ready for that. People are buying these bootlegs of movies because they're not seeing this stuff. If you would talk to people, it was as if you told them their feet were purple and their hands were, you could just tell them they had no clue, and they just wouldn't listen. And meanwhile, other people are like, man, this is where it's at. I'm buying all these movies. Yeah.
Well, it comes a lot from Save the Cat, and I mean no disrespect to Save the Cat, because I actually like it as an organizational principle on how to organize a story. But Save the Cat, which was originally a memo and then a bunch of popular books that Hollywood just absorbs and treats like a Bible. And his whole concept, the guy who wrote that, his idea was no double mumbo jumbo. In other words, if you have vampires, don't also have aliens. If you've got somebody with swords, don't have somebody with magic
I
powers.
can say that I've seen, like, you have to be careful how that is. When I say these things, it's obvious that we've all seen movies where you're like, eh. In fact, I would say that that's one of my complaints about American Horror Story is they seem to pick like 3 or 4 things, and you only need 1 or 2 of those things.
Oh, that's definitely true of American Horror Story. They definitely have like everything and the kitchen sink approach.
Every season, I'm like, either of these, like 2 of the 4, go with those, and and I don't know, because it just seems to get away from them. I'm not sure why, because like the weekend makeup stuff is really, really good. But
how about this?
But I mean,
you could say everything with. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But there's not really. That somehow works in this movie. Like, it's got all the stuff. Now, I will have to say that the ghost thing does like kind of spin you away. Like, it is a little bit filler. It's neat, but it doesn't keep the vampire pace kind of going. You know, in this.
Well, also, it still fits. It's the realm of the supernatural. It's the realm of ghosts and vampires. And it's
I just kind of accepted that the way I would accept a Universal Monster Rally.
Yes.
No, I got you. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it works. It's not as concise, but it still works better than some things where I've seen where they've thrown in the kitchen sink. But you know, for whatever reason, there's just some movies that can make it work. And I don't know if it's sincerity, if it's the glee of making it or what, but there's something about it that works.
You know, it's funny to think, by the way, if you look at Big Trouble in Little China, where you saw some of this stuff, some of this mysticism there. You know, so Carpenter knew what he was about. You know, he had already been exposed to some of these things, and but it just it's taken a while for this stuff to. In fact, I would even go so far as to suggest it still hasn't quite made it into Hollywood. You know, you don't. You know, it's not like the next Chris Pratt movie is going to have him, you know, fighting Chinese vampires. I
think Big Trouble in Little China is a fine example of like nobody thought that could even work. Whether or not
Big Trouble in Little China, if you go financially, it was at the time that it released, it didn't work because that movie didn't initially make money. It was only when it was released on video.
Yeah.
No, that's right. I mean, and there's the other problem is a movie can be really interesting and well made, but if Hollywood, for some reason, first of all, it can be brilliant and you just don't put any money in marketing, it can die, or it can be brilliant, but nobody's quite comfortable marketing it or isn't quite sure who to market it to, and so you just basically completely screw up marketing it. Either one of those will destroy a movie. You know, you can because either one can be death. You know, I can imagine taking this movie and trying to paint it as a pure horror film, and so then people coming in go, well, this is actually funny.
But isn't comedy horror its own genre? I mean, you just market it as comedy horror.
It is. That's true. I mean,
we've done a whole retrospective on it.
Yeah.
Yes. You know, now, remind me, did we do Lost Boys as... What was Lost Boys part of? Did we put it?
We did Lost Boys really earlier when we were really early on when we were basically a pure vampire podcast.
Oh, wow! Those were the.
That was like within the first 20 episodes or so.
Oh, okay. You know, it'd be interesting. We may reach a point where we have to re-record some of these because our actual ideas about these films may change. You know, we may have to have retrospectives part 2. Just to reevaluate some of these early ones. Anyway, I've completely lost the plot of what I was saying because if we're not careful, we could just fall into a diatribe against quote unquote Hollywood handling things poorly. But I think what we're really saying is there's so much innovation on the screen here, and it makes you think, gosh, how tired we can be, how lazy we can be when you know. We just reach for the same old thing, and there's some really neat stuff that can be taken advantage of.
So, what time period is this movie, or is it another movie with an ambiguous time period?
I think it's fairly contemporary. Like, it's just in maybe a more rural kind of area.
Well, it's like some of the people looked like they were wearing, period, and even the modern clothing. It was like a lot of guys in like hats and suits that almost looked like they were from the
20s.
From the 40s.
Well, especially the woman, the woman with the, like I said, the Mary Poppins-y Cinderella dress. That's not a current day, modern day.
Yeah,
dress.
this is early 20th century. That's as much as I'll nail it down. But I can guarantee you it's early 20th century because everybody is still dressing like they're Victorians. The Ting wearing her European fashions looks like Mary Poppins. So yeah, it's. I mean,
I'm always a fan of something with an ambiguous time period. I think in many ways it's better than nailing something down as far as not dating something.
I'm pretty sure it's got a date though. I mean, it's not. We can't quite nail it down, but it's not. This isn't Batman. I mean, they're. No.
It's definitely not as deliberate as the Tim Burton Batman thing. But it's. I don't know. I like the look. I do like the look of it.
I love it. Yeah, all those suits and everything. Yeah, because contemporary Tony, you know what a contemporary Mr. Vampire looks like because we've seen those.
Right.
Everybody's wearing khakis and polo shirts, and the women all have big shoulders, and because contemporary means 1985 or so.
Right. For these things, anyway.
Yeah. Gosh, I don't even know if we've gone in any meaningful order as we've discussed this film, but I feel like we've hit on almost everything. And in fact,
there's just so much. It's almost overwhelming to discuss because it does really, it creates this world and you're instantly kind of drawn into it.
Yes. I'm really impressed. We should wrap up and do our final thoughts. Same direction. Let's go Tony, Drew, Joya, and then I may say something. Tony, final thoughts, Mr. Vampire?
I really, really like this movie a lot. I enjoyed it. I love all the kung fu. I love the combo of kung fu and horror and comedy all in one. I think the cast just works. It's one of my favorite movies, and I've revisited it many, many times. And watching it again, in some ways, I miss my Megastar version because it cost me a decent amount. Because it's hard to find this movie. Like I got it used, and I got a pretty good deal, but it's still going to run you like $20 if you want it, And so I hate that it's hard to find as it is, and the Blu-ray super expensive, like $30 or something I saw, and that sucks because I think more people should be able to find this, and that's quite the shame because whenever somebody talks about it's all streaming, well, guess what? Mr. Vampire is on any streaming service that I could find, and that's kind of crummy. So, but I will have to say the new print that I did see on DVD, and I wish I had the Blu-ray, but it looks great. And the subtitles were great, and so there's used copies around if you can find them. I miss my older version just because of the nostalgia of the way that the subtitles are and everything like that. It's what I had seen it the most, but I just think it all works for me. I really, really enjoy this movie, and it's a great launching pad for if you haven't seen it, you can go back and watch like Encounters of the Spooky Kind or Magic Cop or you can start with this and go through all of Mr. Vampire, then go through New Mr. Vampire, and then wrap it up in reverse order from what we did with Rigor Mortis, and you've got quite a marathon. Of varying quality. I will have to say that there's some. I can't vouch for every Mr. Vampire being the best. But they're certainly all fun. So I highly recommend as much Chinese hopping vampire as you can possibly stand.
I would love to have seen one that had been dubbed by those Hong Kong guys who used to dub all the Shaw Brothers stuff.
Oh, yeah. You think your vampires are quite good? Try
yeah.
my skills. Uh-huh. Huh?
This glutinous rice is not complete.
Yeah.
I love those guys. Man, God, I'd love to interview those guys. Anyway.
That would be definitely my choice of if I could do a documentary. It would be on the English voice of 70s Kung Fu. I mean, I don't know if those guys are still even alive, but I would love to do like a 30-minute, I don't know how long you could do, but 30-minute documentary at least on what we know as the voices of Kung Fu. We didn't have subtitles. Like, those were the voices of Kung Fu for us growing up with Kung Fu theater. I find that fascinating. I wish I could do that. I don't have the means to.
It's truly remarkable. Yeah. They were these, in theory, they were these Hong Kong Chinese guys who spoke English with a bizarre English.
Well, it's British. I mean, because Hong Kong was, occupied. Like, I mean, it was. Yeah. It was British. It was part of the empire, right? Like.
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah. No. And so they had that accent. Oh, just great stuff. And if you saw those movies, you know what we're talking about. If not, you're like, oh, please get on to something else, because I promise you, you'll never forget it. Thank you very, very much. Drew, final thoughts, Mr. Vampire.
I really like this movie, and actually, I think I like it more having talked about it with you guys, because it kind of crystallized a lot of things that I thought was interesting about it. And I was very inspired by this movie. In fact, I started writing a Halloween manuscript that involved Chinese hopping. I actually combined Chinese hopping vampires with my sort of love-hate relationship with Fu Manchu movies.
Oh, great.
So I think it'll turn out
one of your best
fun.
Stories, Drew. I really can't wait to read that. That sounds fantastic. Go ahead.
Well, thank you. That's all I got. That's all I got.
Miss Julia.
Well, I mean, I've already said that I just enjoyed how funny it was. I enjoyed the style. I enjoyed the monsters. I think that it was really clever and original. And I loved the fact that they did their own stunts. I mean, some of the guys, when he jumps off of the balcony and just onto the upper, upstairs balcony onto the floor below. Yeah. He's just jumping. It's just a thing he's doing. There's no cutaway so that he could bounce on a trampoline or any cables or anything. He's just jumping off the second floor. Stuff like that where I'm just like, wow, these guys are serious. But it's a lot of fun, and I felt smart watching it, because it's like, oh, we're being so multicultural or whatever, which was a nice benefit, even, and still having fun and not being like, oh, why must foreign films be so foreign? So it was really enjoyable. So thanks, birthday boy.
Oh yeah, and how speaking of which, I hate to belabor it, but how cool is it? This is '85, and how well it holds up. Like, it really still kind of works. Like, there's a lot of horror movies from the '80s that do not. You watch them again, you're kind of like, ooh, that's
You can almost prove it by the ones that you can think of that are the obvious exceptions. Poltergeist is good. But if you look at movies that you may have really loved at the time, some of them, like even Batman. We mentioned Batman earlier in 1989. Batman kind of drags. I mean, there are.
Let's not go crazy there. Batman's still a pretty fun movie.
Yeah, but in general, there's a lot of movies from '85 that maybe don't hold up.
I'm a pretty big fan of '80s horror, so I will be the holdout on it. I don't know that I can write off that there's a lot of terrible movies from any given decade.
Sure, but I get back to a movie with the whole kitchen sink thrown in, and from '85, like there's a lot. It holds up a lot better than I had imagined. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely, you're right. We don't have to get off into the business of trying to figure out like what doesn't hold up when it's just clear that this really does. I mean, this one is still quite strong. And there's a 2011 remake of Chinese Ghost Story. I don't know if there's a recent remake.
There's also an anime, which I discovered.
Oh no, I reviewed that one. I remember when it came out. years ago. I can probably dig up my review because I kept all that stuff. Wow, and I won't. I have nothing else to add other than what I've said, and I've talked entirely too much on this one. But it was a delight to talk about. Let's do endorsements. Tony, do you have anything for us this week?
Oh, I'm trying to think. It's been a crazy week. I didn't do much, but I had a gig on Friday, and then
no.
Other than watch, I'm hoping with new lineup solidified and with us writing new songs and stuff, I hope that people, if you like what you hear and you like what we're doing, that you'll also check out desertsofmars.com and listen to the tunes and click on the links. If you want to hear more music, there's a Bandcamp page and stuff like that. I know it's very self-serving, but I really feel like, we're getting better gigs and we're getting, we're playing with cool guys and really solidified again as a band, and I feel like really cool about it. Like I feel like it's happening, again. and so like, yeah, I hope everybody and like I said before, like go watch some older Hong Kong supernatural movies, because there's a lot of just cool craziness. Maybe not the craziness of a Japanese movie House, but definitely there's all kinds of cool craziness. If you're lucky enough to have a cool store like we have in Austin, we have Vulcan Video. If you do have a crazy video store, go try to find that section if you can. I hate that things are as out of print as they are, but actively seek out crazy Asian horror like this, especially from Hong Kong. I don't think you'll be disappointed, because there's a lot to mine and there's a lot to watch, and there's a lot of just awesome insanity to be had.
Very cool. Drew, did you have anything to endorse for us this week?
I also have my self-serving endorsement, because last Wednesday, the new issue of Halloween Man came out on Comixology. It is appropriately enough about vampires, although not the Chinese hopping time kind. The vampires in this are actually vegetarian vampires. They are fruit bats, although far more fearsome than you would expect from that scenario. The new issue, also tying it back into the podcast, has a very, very lengthy guide to Hammer horror, which the story arc itself is very much inspired by Hammer movies, particularly the look of Hammer movies. So we were lucky to get Jason, our illustrious head honcho here, to donate a lot of his reviews of various Hammer movies. And I think if you have been reading the story, you will get a lot of enjoyment in looking into that piece, because it's very well written. And brown nose number on Jason, but I was very happy that he let us use it. And it's also got a really awesome write-up on American Werewolf in London by our editor Russell. So it's the end of the vampire story arc. Like, all 3 issues are up on Comixology. They're all $1.99. It's a good jumping on point if you have not been reading Halloween Man. And believe me, we are really, really, really trying to build up our fan base. So if you do read Halloween Man, try to get some of your friends to check out the comic. We really, really, really need to just keep spreading the word on this. So, if we want to keep the cost cheap, because I've been a stickler from the get-go for that $1.99 price point, because I know comics now are so expensive. The best thing you can do is spread the word, because the more fans we have, the more, because literally every dime goes right back to the creative team. So please help out Halloween Man and enjoy Halloween Man. And it's, again, available right now on Comixology.
Okay, yes. I have a bunch of essays in this latest issue, but I'm serious. I always really enjoy reading it. So awesome. There we go. That's enough brown nosing for me too. But thank you, Julia. Anything to endorse?
Not really. I think I've endorsed everything that I'm into right now.
Well, and we've been busy. I mean, the Oscars were upon us, and
well, I was thinking about the movies, and I'm like, well, I think I endorsed Boyhood a while ago. It's a fantastic movie.
Yep.
And I just endorsed the Imitation Game, so those would be the ones. Birdman, I was not big a fan of Birdman. We watched it, but it was weird. I don't know.
I endorsed Landmark Theaters, though, boy, where we saw Birdman. So, Tony, you got to dig this place. So you have, and they have like 2 of them in Denver, but you pay, the tickets are a little more expensive. They're not full-on premium expensive, but they're a little more. They're like $13 or something. But you get free refillable sodas and popcorn with it. Mm-hmm. It's just so you get the ticket, and then you just got free sodas and popcorn. You can't go wrong with that.
It's really funny.
That's pretty good, actually.
And this is, like, instead of going, you have a draft house there. So I don't know how I feel about this, but I guess.
Yeah, Tony's got a point. I like popcorn, but I like cheeseburgers more.
Well, no, for sure.
No, but the popcorn is free, and the cheeseburgers cost extra money. However, we do obviously
we go to the draft house all the time.
We go to the draft house all the time. Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
It just depends on what's showing. But the Landmark tends to show not necessarily the same things that the draft house is showing.
Well, and the draft house has the events. And
although this week I'm intending. There are a couple of really neat things. Don't Go in the Woods is showing this. I think it's Wednesday or Thursday at the Draft House, and I intend to go to see that. And so there's some really great showings. Oh, and Videodrome is coming.
I did remember something. So one thing that came across my feed this week is Wormwood, which I've talked about before after Fantastic Fest, the zombie movie from these guys from Australia, appears to be one of the most pirated movies in the world.
Really?
And and they actually tried to address it and said, hey, that's cool, you guys love our movie. This is awesome,
yeah.
But, hey, if you want to throw some money at us, here's all the ways you can legally do that. Isn't that great? And they had a very tongue-in-cheek, matey kind of post. And it was really like, if you are going to be pirated, I thought it was really great. And then you have all these, like, jackasses who come out of the woodwork and go, I pirated that. Anyway, and, here's all the ways that you should change the distribution model, and then maybe if you somehow move heaven and earth, maybe I'll buy your movie next time.
Yeah,
or whatever. All this stuff happens. So, look,
it's the sanctimony that really makes me crazy.
They're saying, so that you have the creators, and they go, hey, look, you pirated. That's cool, but we actually deferred our payments. We don't have a studio. We actually, the money that you spend actually comes to us for the most part. Or even if it's, again, like I've said before, say Amazon takes a cut. You're giving some to Amazon. You're still giving to the filmmaker. Like, some money is always better than no money.
The entitledness of people who download is
who say that, like, well, maybe if you change the system, or maybe if this series of events happens, maybe I'll give you your money. When the creators actually really try to go, look, it's awesome that it's so popular. We can't even imagine it being that popular. Thank you so much for checking out our movie. We worked really hard. And to watch people go, hey, that's cool. Yeah, but I still took it. That's cool, right?
Well, what I think
ridiculous.
is really funny in the commentary for these things is how the people who are intent on being supportive of illegally downloading movies will always get really uppity about it, like very sanctimonious.
Well, there's so much victim blaming. But here's my point.
Future, they're on the cutting edge, and so there gets to be this kind of crazy righteousness about it. Like,
well, yeah, they tell to flat out tell the filmmaker, well, you should do things absolutely differently in a way that the market won't allow you to at this moment, right? Like, because in the future, that yes, maybe all of this will change. That's great. I live right now, like at this very moment. I live. So instead of going, hey, thanks, man. Like, you're actually cool about this. Like, maybe I will give you a couple of bucks. Or by giving you a couple of bucks, I give you $1. Like, the dollar is better
that you're dealing with somebody who's not arguing, who is arguing disingenuously when they argue with the straw man. So, like, they'll go, well, you're assuming, you, the movie maker, are assuming that every illegal download equals a lost sale, and that's not true. That's irrelevant. That's not necessarily the case.
Yeah.
It's and it doesn't matter that it's not the case. Yeah, I totally get, the filmmaker, totally get that 10 people downloaded it for free, but maybe if that didn't exist, maybe only 2 would buy it. But
or be exposed to it. And like I said, they were really cool. Yeah. So my point really is, like, screw that. Like, Wormwood is really cool. There are many ways, which they posted, and I just saw that it came up on Amazon Instant in my Facebook feed. You can actually rent it for $6.99, which is a little bit much, but it's not out of the realm of what you're renting other things for on Amazon. So, these guys deferred they made a movie that's hella fun. They were really nice people. I met them. I met the makeup artist who was a makeup artist and then went into forensic, like, actually digging up bodies, like, and looking at them, kind of, forensic thing, and then came back to doing the makeup here. And, I met all these people. They're really cool. And they have a thing that they took them, like, 4 years to make. So don't be that person. Rent or wait till the Blu-ray's out. That's fine, too. But, support indie film where you can of, fun. And if it's not your bag, that's fine. But don't, here's the thing, Wormwood, which you can get now legally, that also happens to be one of the biggest things that you can get illegally. So if you've done that, or if you're just interested, there's a thing called Wormwood, which you should check out, and that's with a Y. So support the filmmakers who are legitimately trying to, do something cool and have been rewarded by, exposure, which I love. That's always good. But just think of all the exposure you got, and try paying rent with exposure. That's That's what I tell people. Like,
you were talking about the way people who defend downloading. To me, it always reminds me of a little kid sticking his thumbs in his ears and going, nah, 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 so he can't hear what you're saying. When somebody's explaining to you how they're, the thing I always get from people, like I talk to people at conventions who, like, tell me, like, oh, well, I'll download your comic at first. I'll download the first issue to see if I like it. And then if I like it, I'll go pay for the rest. Like, if you were to go into a convenience store and get a candy bar and eat the candy bar to see, like, go, well, I'll eat this one Twix to see if I'll like this other Twix. That's still stealing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of, like, part of me understands a little bit. Like, for example, it was hard to find. I bought a copy, because that's me. It's hard to find Mr. Vampire.
Yeah,
so some people might have to go online to find, like, that. I understand the world we live in, but it does gall me when people go, look, here is a legal, like, this is a way you can do this, and have people, like, just ignore that and throw up all kinds of crazy excuses.
I agree with what Drew said, that also, which is not inconsistent with what you're saying, Tony, which is that, when people try to explain it to you, usually it's a very dissembling and self-serving explanation,
Well, I mean, speaking frankly, as somebody who has found a lot of my stuff on illegal download sites, like, I don't care. Like, if you read the one issue of my comic and hate it, you still should have paid for that one issue. And I would rather get. I'm trying to keep, my head above water and keep my creative team paid, and they deserve to be, given their cut of the money that we're making instead of, And
again, I tell people, some money, some pennies are better than no money. Have you ever, if anybody has ever understood looking in your ashtray of your car for change to back in the day a payphone, but maybe to get a soda, can maybe understand that all of those pennies made a difference, or the find a penny, the give a penny, take a penny thing. Like, every penny is something. So when somebody goes like, well, you know, you only get 10 cents, the record label gets the rest, or the movie company or the distributor gets the rest. It's like, yes, but I kind of wanted and needed that 10 cents. Of course, by saying all of this, I'm sure righteously people will go, well, look at Mr. Artist trying to get money. Like, you should be lucky you have exposure, which happens a lot too. But please,
what's more important to me is, again, you don't have to justify to us whether you need or don't need that 10 cents. It's up to you. It's up to Drew whether he wants to give away issue 1 or not. And if he wants to give away issue 1 in order to drum up sales, great. But it's totally uncool for somebody to say, you know what, I think you need a new marketing program where you give them away, and then if people like it, they send you money. And so because you haven't decided to do that, I'm going to start doing that marketing.
Well, and people, you know, it's kind of the paraphrase what Tony's saying. People liking something doesn't help pay rent.
Yeah.
You know,
but
like
I've
paid my fair share of money to go. Like, I hated Pitch Black or whatever that the first Riddick movie. I wanted to walk out of it, but I still paid for it. Yeah, but I still paid for it.
Yeah.
And,
in general, though, I mean, my real we got off on a tangent again, but my real thing is I like Wormwood. I endorse it. I think it's available legally, and I think people should check it out legally. And you know, it's there's numerous ways where you can see this movie. The fact that it's one of the most downloaded movies, while some of the actors, you know, have been deferred payments and all, you know, and they're really cool people too, which is always nice. That, you know, I think it's fun. I think it was cool. And regardless of what you or whoever might think this or that is flawed, that doesn't matter. It's out there. So please get it or don't. But, you know, give credit where credit is due, please, because I think those cats are awesome. And I hope they make more. And I would hate to see them not make more movies because the, you know, craziness. So
that was wonderful, and it's a really good conversation, and I'm going to make sure that Bleeding Cool hopefully includes this conversation in the headline, because I'd like to get people listening, and I'd really love, I'm telling you, Tony, nobody on this call that's talking right now is on the other side would even dare to try to say, well, here's why I regularly steal movies. And
no, I know, but it's weird. Ever since Metallica tried to do what they did, like there's a weird thing where people like, anytime I try to like and again, the reason I'm bringing it up is because the Wormwood guys tried to be cool about it. Yeah. That anytime it's brought up, there's a weird kind of thing where people go, you should be lucky you even get to do what you do.
Yeah. No, I get it.
And that's always really strange.
I would be interested in having one of those people here, because what I mean is the three of us are shooting fish in a barrel, and I would really love to like have one of these guys come on and try to talk, you know, and debate with us.
Well, I have friends that illegally download everything that they can, and I don't know if I could pull them online for a debate, but that's might be a fun extracurricular activity.
Well, I was told by a friend that wasn't my album, just a calling card, so I could get better gigs and stuff like that. In which case, I told him flat out, no, it's also a product. Like, yeah, I mean that the idea. Let's ask any filmmaker. Let's ask Spielberg if his latest movie is. And I'm not saying I'm the Spielberg of music, but I'm saying ask anybody who's trying if everything they do now is just a calling card.
Well, the idea, you know, because I live with a musician as well, and the idea that like the only way a musician should be allowed to make money off their music anymore is playing live is the most ludicrous system.
Okay,
going.
I do have a devil's advocate position for you. And that is that if you're doing your art, it's because you love it. If you're doing a job that you don't love, that's why you get paid. Because that's what people say. It's like, I think there's an expression no, I'm just telling you that that's the position, that there's an expression that in Spanish that says that work is so awful that they actually pay you to do it.
No. But that's a
I'm just giving you. I said I was giving you a devil's advocate.
Yeah.
I would definitely say,
you love it, and that's why you do it.
I definitely say, especially in the case of musicians, the hours that go into perfecting playing the various musical instruments and singing and performing, that's work. It may also be art, but that's
I'm
work.
a musician too. I put in like 5 hours a week doing music, and I don't get paid for it because I'm volunteering. That's my thing. But I'm not saying that's how it should be for everyone. I'm just saying
what I'm saying is the reason why that is why I don't think that's the strongest argument. In other words, if you're going to advocate for piracy, that's not your strongest argument, because the business of I work, you don't get paid for the stuff that you love. That has to do generally with whether the market is interested in paying you. Whether So I'm going to go work as I'm going to sweep up at the store, and they're going to pay me money to do it, and I don't like sweeping up, and I'm going to get paid. But what I get paid has nothing to do with whether I like sweeping or not sweeping. What I get paid totally has to do with what the market value is.
Right, what people are willing to pay, because nobody else wants to sweep, and so they don't want to pay. So if people are not willing, and so let's continue that. If people are not willing to pay for me to write books, that's totally, totally cool. What's not cool is stealing the books. Right, true.
In other words, I'm totally down with it.
Like people should have the choice of whether or not. I've made that choice.
So
our album's been out for a while.
Okay.
I have my counter argument. It's called show business, not show art.
Yes, I'm down with that.
Anyway, I think that we've had this conversation.
Yeah, I know, but I didn't mean it to devolve quite so much. But I really do mean it.
No. This is good. This is a good exercise for my beleaguered brain.
I like it. I'm very happy with this.
My thing is pay for movies by indie artists, please. That's my bottom line. Specifically in this case, Wormwood.
Don't steal.
Yeah, I'm good with don't steal as well. And if you talk to these guys, you say, well, it's stealing. That what they say is, well,
stealing is wrong. That's in the Bible.
No, they say stealing is I physically got something. The argument is usually it's a copyright violation and not stealing.
Yeah,
let's
change the definition of stealing. Which is basically what anybody would say if they want to excuse their stealing.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and I can't throw the first stone. Like, I mean, I had Napster and I have the internet. Like, I listen to stuff on.
Oh yeah.
I'm not saying that I've never done that, or that I haven't viewed movies or whatever, but I do. I mean, like I said, this time around, my copy of Mr. Vampire was gone, and I could not find it. I bought one used, and that movie, of course, didn't go to Golden Harvest, that money, because it was used, but it did go to somebody.
Yeah,
and that's a big difference.
I use bootlegs all the time. If I can't find something, I use bootlegs.
But when you're told, you're told, hey, there's a legal way to get that.
Absolutely.
Be cool.
Absolutely.
Be cool, honey bunny.
Yeah.
Like good little Fonzies.
So
Samuel L. Savaggio here.
Yes. I'll skip my endorsements this week and come back to you next week.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. Hopefully, actually, I really like this conversation, and I'd love for somebody to come on and talk really honestly about the notion of not why should artists give away their art, because I think we could have that debate from a marketing perspective, but why is it morally okay for people to steal art? That's the question. That I would love for somebody to come on, and I'm not being sarcastic, I'd love for somebody to come on and go, Jason, you're completely misunderstanding, it's completely appropriate, and here's why. Now, I guarantee you it will enrage us, but we will still be nice to you, I promise.
I expect you to call you a dirty commie if you tell me that you've stolen comics.
I'm sorry? I completely missed that. What?
I said expect me to call you a dirty, filthy commie if you tell me that you've stolen comics.
Yeah. No, and Tony, what did you say? I'm sorry.
No, I said I've had kind of that debate in gotten enraged this weekend, so I don't know. Yeah. Those comments always enrage me, and also, like I said before, it's always dangerous to talk too much because then the eye of Sauron is on me, and ever since the Metallica thing, like any artist who kind of speaks up instantly gets, I don't know, it's such a weird world. I don't know. But
no, I know. This is when I really thought that suddenly Neil Gaiman was not being as brave as perhaps he could have. When Neil Gaiman came out and said, "Well, I think we should encourage people to steal work because in the end it helps us find sales." Like
that's easy for Neil Gaiman to say.
Yeah, exactly. That's awfully brave for Neil freaking Gaiman to say. And I was just like, this is an artist I really respect, but I kind of feel like
he's already got his
right
money.
Yeah.
So
easy for him to say. Neil, if you're listening, honestly, I love your work. So I'm not.
Well, in the same token, people always tell me, what about Prince? What about Nine Inch Nails? What about Radiohead? And none of those people were giving away their album when they were lowercase Prince, lowercase Nine Inch Nails, which I guess was never really, but lowercase Ray. All these people gave them away at the height.
Well, and
maybe
also
not the height, but like
to them, it's completely their choice. And by the way, I got Taylor Swift. By the way, said, "Fuck that! I am not allowing my album on Spotify." And that did not hurt her at all. There
was a huge backlash, but I guess sales were still okay.
Right,
so, I mean, what do I know?
The album. People still want the album, and so they're like, "Okay, darn it." And Spotify is not even piracy. Spotify is actually Spotify. But
you get paid. You just don't get paid a lot.
Yeah, it's up. My point is, it's up to the artist. We should respect that. I really believe that. But okay, and pay with money. If you don't think something is not worth it, then don't spend. But okay, boy, what a bunch of preaching. Okay, thank you,
Sorry,
everybody.
If
you have comments or want to get involved in this conversation, we would love to hear from you. We will even be very, very sweet. All of us, I promise.
I won't. I will be mean and nasty, and my horns will be on my head, and I will have fangs.
Awesome.
Leave us
reviews. This sounds like a new Halloween costume from Drew.
Here's the thing. It's like midnight Texas time, so it's officially Tony's birthday. Happy birthday, Tony!
Happy
birthday!
Happy birthday!
And wow, we've been talking a long time. Thank you.
All righty.
If you like us, leave reviews at iTunes. It helps people find the show. Come to our Facebook page. Let us know what you think. Listen to us. If you're coming from Bleeding Cool, we are so thankful to hear from you. If you're coming from Stitcher, same thing. Listening on your phone. Totally dig that. We will see you next week with more Asian horror. I do not know what the movie is, but I can't wait to find out. See you soon. Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Night.
Bye.
Night.